My name's Whit and I am the Sparta Community Branch Manager. Today we're going to be doing a pretty simple screen printing process. I'm going to be making cards, but this can be used for a lot of different mediums. You can definitely use this to print on t-shirts or bags, and scale it up really large, but we're going to keep it pretty small using items from around your house. So let's look at what we need for this project. The first thing you're going to need is an embroidery hoop. This one is a 4-inch embroidery hoop that 4 inches across. It's pretty small, but since we're going to be making cards, this is about the scale I need for this. But you can also, like I said, use a much larger one if you'd like. And you're just pretty much limited to the size of the embroidery hoop that you use. Even on larger embroidery hoops, you can put multiple images on it. So definitely you can use what you have. You can get these at craft stores or big box stores, but you can also, I like to find them at thrift stores because they're usually very cheap at thrift stores. Next, you're going to need some screening, and what we're going to be using for the screen is a sheer curtain, just cutting out a little square out of a sheer curtain. You can take it off your window if you'd like. Probably not a great idea, but again, these can be found very cheaply at thrift stores or even just buying them new. They're not very expensive and you can get a lot of material out of it. So next you're going to be needing some paint brushes, smaller if you're using a smaller embroidery hoop. If you're using a larger embroidery hoop, you might want larger brushes. But if you're doing a very detailed image, we'll get into that in a little bit, you're definitely going to want a small brush to get those little fine details. Scissors, some masking or painter's tape, just to we're just going to be using this to hold things in place so they don't move around on us. Now the big thing that we definitely need that is a little bit different about this tutorial is that you will need some house paint, some latex house paint. There's a lot of similar tutorials like this that use Mod Podge, which absolutely works, and I've used that technique before very successfully. But when using house paint, it lasts a lot longer. If you want to reuse the screen, you have to rinse out the ink or paint that you use in the screen, and if you rinse it out with Mod Podge, it tends to get sticky and the lines start to blur. But with this latex house paint, if you let it dry completely and you let it cure, it's not going to budge basically when you wash it out the screen. So I really like using this technique. I also feel like you can get finer details a little bit better on some of those with the paint. You also need an image that you're going to use. I'm doing some heart themes for Valentine's Day. I just hand drew this one, but you can absolutely find an image off the internet or a personal image you might have. I would say in your first go, you might want to try to do something a little simple. You definitely can make very detailed images with this technique and other screen printing techniques, but on your first go, keeping it simple might be a good idea. Because the painting of it, we'll get to that, is a little bit involved and takes a little bit of time. So you'll need pencils. I have 2 different pencils, or pen or Sharpie will also work. You're also going to need, I'm going to be using paint for our medium for this process. Basically, just because it's cheap, readily available. You can, of course, get screen printing ink if you like, but that's, harder to come by. I mean, you'd have to go looking for it. This is just a heavy body acrylic that I got at some big box store. And what I mean by heavy body is it's a little bit thicker. You don't want anything that's runny because of the process, you don't want it to run underneath your screen. So you just want a heavy bodied acrylic for this, in whatever color you want to use, that doesn't matter. Same with the house paint. It can be whatever you painted your bathroom will totally work. One more thing I would like to say about the house paint. I'm using a low VOC, just because if you're going to be doing it in closed room, you really don't want all the fumes. So if you don't have a low VOC or a 0 VOC, definitely do it in a well-ventilated room or outside even, but you just don't want, we're not going to be using a lot of paint, but even then you want to be careful with that. So you're also going to want something that you're going to be doing your printing on. Like I said, I'm going to be making a card, but you can also use a canvas bag or your t-shirt. So there's lots of possibilities with that. I recommend maybe a glove because it does get messy towards the end. And then also something to protect your surface. This is just like a party tablecloth that I cut up and taped down. And also something to protect your clothes, because like I said, it can get messy. And then like any decorative elements you might want to add to your final project. So but that's what we need to get started, and let's get started. So we are going to want to take our embroidery hoop apart by unscrewing this little screw here, and that'll make the outer loop loose, and we'll have this inner hoop. So we're going to lay that down flat, take our screening material, lay that over it, and then pop this over the top. Come on, get on there. All right, so once you get it on there, you do want to start screwing this little screw down to make it tight, and at the same time pulling the net so it's nice and taut across the hoop. You want to try to get out all the wrinkles if you can. It's not going to be a disaster if you don't, but it'll be better if you do. So pull it as tight as you can while you tighten that little screw. So let's get that all. If you turn it at an angle, it helps see if there's bumps or wrinkles in it, and it helps to see where you need to pull it tighter. All right, and then you really want to crank it down so it's nice and tight, and that's not going to move on you while you're doing this process. So I think I've got that pretty flat. It's kind of going to have like a drum type feeling to it. You can also use pantyhose or tights for this. I don't like it because it does give it a little bit more bounce, so I prefer this stiffer curtain material, but that's just personal preference. Use what you have. So then you're going to cut off a little bit. I'd probably leave a little bit of about an inch around the edge. You don't want it flopping all over the place, but also it's nice to have an edge, because one nice thing about this is if you decide to make multiple screens or something like that, but you only have one embroidery hoop, you can take the screen off the hoop and keep that screen. You don't have to throw it away or anything. It'll stay fine, but and then reuse your hoop over and over for different screens. But if it's a little bit larger than the embroidery hoop, it definitely makes that process a lot easier. But if you're intending just to leave it on the hoop forever and ever, don't worry about it. You can cut it real close if that makes working with it easier for you. All right, so that's what this end product's gonna look like. We're gonna add a little bit of eraser dust on there. So now we're gonna get our image, and we're gonna tape it down with our painter's tape. Basically, we don't want it to move while we're tracing over it. And so I'll tape this down, Then we'll lay our hoop. We're gonna get the side that's flush with the hoop. We're gonna put that face down on top of the image we want to put onto our screen. And then I tape this down as well, so that we can not having our hoop move all over. All right, so now this is where we're gonna trace the image onto the hoop. I'm just gonna use a pencil. It absolutely will transfer clear enough using a pencil, but a Sharpie would work, a pen would work, so whatever you got handy. So I'm not gonna trace all of this because it won't be super exciting to watch, just to give you an idea of what it's gonna look like on the hoop once we get it traced. I'll get these two big hearts traced. How about that? And then we can get to work on it. All right. It does not have to be perfect. This is not the final. It's not its final form here, so get close so you can just you know what's going on. But all right, so we're gonna take this off. I got the two big hearts there traced. Ooh, I missed a spot. Let's go back and get that. So I'm just gonna reline it up. So, not a big deal. There it goes. Ah, there it is. I see it now. All right. Take this guy out of the way. All right, so now we have the hoop with the little hearts traced on it, and now is where we start painting. So we're gonna get our house paint. This is white, so it's not really much to see in there, but you can, like I said, you can use any color. We're gonna leave this with the flush slide down onto our surface that we have protected. I recommend something plastically like this just because the paint doesn't stick to it as much, but newspaper totally will work. It's not super important. So I'm gonna start by getting the edges of this first. The edges of the hearts here. Oh, I'm gonna tape it down again so it does not move while I'm painting. There it goes, moving around. All right. So I'm not gonna load a whole bunch of paint on the brush and then just start going in there. We're gonna paint, you wanna, you know, it's like coloring inside the lines basically. Or outside the lines in this case. And we're gonna fill in all of this dead space here, negative space. All right, so I haven't painted everything because I have a completed hoop to show you, but I did want to show you one little thing about between this step and the next. You're gonna want to let your paint it completely, obviously, and then you're gonna want to let your paint dry. If you're using some old house paint that you have around the house, you can read on the back of the paint can. It'll tell you how long it takes for the paint to dry. But since this is, you know, pretty lightweight and we're not putting a million coats on, it doesn't take long at all. And if you want to speed it up, you definitely can use a hair dryer on it or something like that. But I would say a good couple of hours to get it to dry. Oh goodness. Okay, so left a lot of paint down because this is not dry. So when you pull it up, you're gonna hold it up to the light. You'll see the paint on there. So you're gonna hold it up and you'll see light where light comes through and like little pinpricks in the solid paint. And so that is what you want to fill in. You want to basically have the paint be your resist medium. And that is what's gonna make it not have the paint or ink or whatever go through. So you'll just, you'll look at it and you'll see little dots of the netting that haven't been filled in with paint, and you just go back with your brush and dot, 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 and fill those up. This is the longest part of the process, and it does take a while, especially if you have something very intricate. But I mean, you definitely are pretty much unlimited of what you want to do. You can definitely do images, like photographic images. You can do lettering is really easy with this technique. But the more complicated the image, the longer this will take. I recommend at this point, once you get it all painted in, to let it cure overnight. Honestly, that is it. It will be dry in a couple hours and usable in a couple hours, but to have it fully cured, letting it dry overnight is your best bet. But like I said, if you're in a hurry, blow dryer, couple hours, you're good. All right, so this is a screen that I've already used and has been all filled in, and I filled in all the pinpoints on there. Ooh, there may be a few I need to fill in more, and that's the other thing with this technique. You can, if you notice that your prints are getting unclear or lines aren't straight, or you're getting little pieces around your image, you definitely can go back with paint and fill those in and fix up your screen. So let's show you how to pull a print from this. So we've got the card that we're going to be printing on. We've got the completed screen that I've already used. That's why it's a little tinted red. And I washed it out, and so it's definitely reusable. We're going to just lay that on top of our card. Lay that on top of our card. Get it positioned how you like. Then we're going to take our tube of paint. And again, you can use screen printing ink. You can definitely use whatever kind of paint you need. You just want something that has a lot, like watercolor paint would not be a good option for this. A lot of craft paint that's really runny doesn't work as great. You can buy mediums to mix into something like craft paint that makes it a little bit thicker, that gives it more body. But usually this tube type paint is just the right consistency of what you need. So I'm gonna hold it down with my hand, and then I'm just gonna squeeze it. I'm gonna try to mostly get in the white area when I squeeze the paint on. and not directly over where the screen is. You don't need a whole lot. I've probably put too much on, honestly. Then I'm going to be using just a little craft stick, little tiny, extra tiny one, just because of the size of the screen. You can use a larger craft stick. Most commonly, I would use maybe an old gift card doesn't have anything on it anymore, and that's just to pull the ink across I'm saying ink, it's paint, but pull the medium across the screen. So, but in this case, I'm going to use this little tiny craft stick to do that. So we're just kind of basically not wanting the screen to move at all, pull the ink across it. Now, if you had a big square rectangular screen printing frame, you would pull this pretty evenly and make sure not to, miss any spots, and you just would pull it straight back and forth. But because we're working in more of a rounded medium, kind of have to work with what we got. So some of these images that are a little bit closer to the edge, you really have to work the ink into there so you get the full printing. You don't want to miss any spots is the main thing. You don't want it to like linger in a spot either, because you don't want it to saturate it and leak out underneath the screen. So you kind of have to move quickly, but just make sure everything gets covered. Kind of clear it off the screen as much as you can. And then for the big reveal. Oh, come on now. Ta-da! Oh, I missed a little corner. That'll happen. Don't worry about it. If you miss a little bit, I think it looks more charming that way, honestly. It definitely says, I made this myself. So, again, simpler shapes will come out much, very clean, and you can make real clean lines. When you get detailed, you have to do some really fine painting for it to come out, when you're painting on the house paint on there. But that is the final product for that. And then from here, you can decorate however you like. You can add lots of doodads and gigas and just make it real fancy if you like. You can do it on fabric. And that if you want to do it on fabric, I would recommend mixing a fabric medium into the paint so it makes it a little bit more durable in the wash if you feel like you're going to be washing it. But for things like bags, I usually don't, because you don't wash those a lot anyway. But other than that, here are your DIY screen printed cards.